Hello guys, welcome back. I'm Yusuf Shakeel and you are watching CSS tutorial series. In this video, we are going to learn about list styling properties. So let's get started. Alright guys, I've opened brackets and now I'll go ahead and create a new file inside the project folder. And I'll save this as list.html. And I'll write the following HTML code. So we have the doc type HTML, opening and closing HTML tag. We have the opening and closing head tag, and for this page we have set the title to list. Now inside the CSS folder, we'll go ahead and create a new file and we'll save this as list.css. Now inside our HTML file, inside the head, we will include this list.css file. So we'll write link rel and we'll set this to style sheet. And href css/link.css. And now we'll go ahead and open this in live preview. Alright. The two commonly used lists in HTML are an unordered list and an ordered list. So let us go ahead and create an unordered list of fruits. So inside the body we'll write ul for unordered list, and let us give this unordered list an ID. Let's say sample-ul1, and inside this list we'll have three list items which are name of the fruits. So the first one is apple. The second one is mango, and the third one is orange. The first property that we are going to discuss is the list style type property, and it is used to style the marker for the list items. So inside our CSS file, since we are going to target this unordered list having ID sample-ul1, so inside the CSS file, we'll write hash sample-ul1. And to style the marker for the list items, we use list style type property. And the default value is disk. And we get disk marker for the list items. Let me zoom in. So the list marker type is disk, which is also a default value. So if we comment this out, we'll still get a disk marker for all the list items. Now let's say we want a square marker for the list items. So in that case, we'll write list-style-type, and we'll set the value of this property to square. And now if you look at the output, you can see the markers are now in square shape. We can also use circle. So we'll set the list style type property to circle. And now the markers are in circle shape. And let's say if we don't want any marker for the list items, then in that case, we can set the list-style-type property to none. And now we are not having any marker for the list items. So let me set this back to square. So now we have square markers for the list items. We can also set the margin and padding for the list. So let us go back to our HTML file and create another unordered list, and let us give this list an ID sample-ul2, and let this unordered list have 3 items. The first is some random text, let's say hello world. The second item, let's say happy, and let's say the third item is list. Now since we are going to target this unordered list having ID sample-ul2, so inside the CSS file we'll write hash sample-ul2. Now if you look at the output, you can see the list items for this list is having a padding at the left side. So we can set the padding for the left side using the padding-left property. And if we want to increase the padding, we can set the padding-left value to some higher value. So let's say 80 pixels. And now you can see the items are shifted some 80 pixels from the left side. We can also reduce the padding left value. So let's say we don't want any padding, so we can set the left padding value to 0. And now the elements are starting from the left side. So let us give this list items a padding of 30 pixels for the left side. We can also give margin for this list. So let us go ahead and give this list a margin of 10 pixels at the top. So we'll set the margin-top property to 10 pixels. And let us give a margin of 20 pixels at the bottom. So we'll set the margin bottom property to 20 pixels. And we can check this by clicking on the list and going to inspect. And now if we look at this, we can see we have a padding of 30 pixels at the left side, and we have a margin of 10 pixels at the top and 20 pixels at the bottom. We can also set the width for the list. So let's say inside our HTML file, we have another unordered list, and let's say it has an ID sample-ul3. And let's say this list has 3 items. The first item is, this is a text inside the list item of unordered list. The second item is, you are reading the second list item. And the third list item is, and this is the last item of the list. So if we look at the output, we can see we have a list having 3 items. Now to target this unordered list having ID sample-ul3, we'll write inside our CSS file hash sample-ul3. And to set the width of this list, we use the width property. And let's say we want a 50% width for this list. So we'll set the width property to 50%. And now you can see the width of this list is reduced to 50%. And this is with respect to the width of the browser. So if we increase the width of the browser, you can see the width of the list is increasing. And if we decrease the width of the browser, the width of the list is decreasing. And this is always 50%. Now, let me comment this out. Now if you want a fixed width of, let's say, 100 pixels for this list, then we can set the width property to 100 pixels. And now this list will have 100 pixels width even if we increase or decrease the browser size. The next property that we'll discuss is the list style position property. And this property defines how the text will appear if it continues to the next line. So let's say inside our HTML file, we have another unordered list. So let me go ahead and copy this and paste it. And let us set the ID for this unordered list to sample-ul4. So inside our CSS file, we'll write hash sample-ul4. And let's set the width for this list to, let's say, 150 pixels. Now, the default value for list style position property is outside, which means if the text continues to the next line, like for example, if we look at the first list item, we can see the text continues to the next line. Then if we set the list style position property to outside, then the text which appears in the next line or the third line and so on will always appear shifted towards the right from the marker. And if we set the list style position property value to inside, then you can see the text that appears from the next line is starting below the marker. So if we set the value to outside, then the text will appear shifted towards the right side from this marker. And if we set it to inside, then the text that appears from the next line onwards will appear below the marker. The next property that we'll discuss is the list style image property. And we use this property when we want custom image as markers for the list items. So let's say inside our HTML file, we have an unordered list. So let me go ahead and copy this. And this unordered list has an ID sample-ul5. So inside our CSS file, we'll write hash sample-ul5. Now let's say we want to use a star image as marker for the list items of this list. So I have downloaded a small -star.png file, and inside our CSS project folder, we will go ahead and place this small -star.png file inside the image folder. And now if you look at the image folder in brackets, you'll see we have small -star.png file. Now to use this small -star.png image as marker for this list items, we'll write list -style -image, and we'll set the value for this property to the path of this image file. So we'll write URL /, then we'll select the image folder, and then we'll select the small dash star.png file. And now if you look at the output, we have stars as marker for the list items. By default, the list items are displayed in a new line, that is vertically. But if we want to display the list item horizontally, then we have to set the display property for the list items. So let's say inside our HTML file, we have another unordered list having ID sample-ul6, and it is a list of fruits. Now let's say we want the list items to be displayed horizontally. So inside our CSS file, we'll write hash sample-ul6. And since the list item li element are descendant of this ul element having ID sample-ul6, so we'll write hash sample-ul6 space li. And now we'll set the display property to inline. And now if you look at the output, all the items of the list is now displayed in a single line. Similarly, we can style ordered list. So let's say inside our CSS file, we have an ordered list, and let's say it has an ID sample-ol1. And let's say it is a list of fruits, and the first item is apple, second one is mango, and the third item is orange. So we have 3 items for this ordered list having ID sample-ol1. And by default, the marker for the list items are in decimal number. So the first item is having marker 1, second is having number 2, and third item is having number 3. We can change this marker by setting the list style type property. So inside our CSS file, since we are going to target this ordered list having ID sample-ol1, we'll write hash sample-ol1. And let's say we want the marker to be in alphabet and in uppercase. So we'll write list-style-type, and we'll set the value to upper-alpha. And now we have the marker in alphabet and in uppercase. And if we want, let me comment this. And let's say if we want lowercase alphabet as markers for this list items, we can set the list style dash type property to lower dash alpha. And now we have lowercase marker for the list items. Similarly, we can use uppercase Roman numeral to mark the list item. So in that case, we'll set the list dash style dash type property to upper dash Roman. And we are now having Roman numeral for the items. So 1, 2, and 3 in Roman. And similarly, we can use lowercase Roman to mark the list items. So we'll write list style dash type property, and we'll set this to lower dash Roman. And we now have lowercase Roman numeral as marker for the list items. Alright guys, this brings us to the end of this tutorial. I'll post the tutorial notes on my website dyclassroom.com. The link will be in the description, and all the code that we are writing in this tutorial series, I'll put them in my GitHub repository. You will find all the links in the description, so feel free to check that out. And if you find this video interesting, then please give this video a like and please subscribe my channel. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video, and like always, stay happy and keep smiling. Bye.